Here goes. I'm about a minute late today. It could be helped, but decided not to. Ooh, it's been a fun week. Bernie Sanders, well, has quit campaigning. Not technically out of the race, but everybody else reads it that way. New York has had a shit week as far as this coronavirus shit goes. There's not much to say about that, except people are dead. Yeah, that's never happy. And then to top it all off, it's been becoming less and less obvious what's really going on with this whole thing, because, last week I talked a bit about the coronavirus 5G link, and as I've done a little bit more research onto that side of things, it seems to get murkier and murkier. I mean, the obvious thing to do is still just act like it's a virus. Protect yourself. But there's still a level of frustration of being potentially deceived by pretty much the people you're supposed to trust the most. But it's kind of par for the course at this point. I mean, when have we ever been able to trust the authorities? It's just been one long history of fuck you after fuck you, But then how much do we actually study our history? No. But I had a good week, though. This week I got to read this book. What was it called? What I Believe by Tolstoy. I think it was Tolstoy, but yeah. Russian author, pretty famous. He had this fun idea about creating an interpretation of the Bible, right? And spoiler alert, I guess. His main point was to avoid resisting evil, and that being the core tenet of the New Testament, which is kind of bonkers as far as, philosophies go, especially if you're a judge, don't resist evil. Don't judge. Judge not, lest ye be judged, It's a fun idea. And then he realized, wait, and that is the core tenet of the Bible. We don't resist evil. We help. Everything about society is broken then. Right? The very nature of society, especially the Russian system. And mind you, Tolstoy being one of the greatest treasures in Russian literature, has this book of all books banned in Russia. Of course, not while he's alive, but it's crazy because, people love the message as long as it suits their own agendas. I mean, it's just human nature. But it's funny when you can have a universal message and have it seen as an act of terror, or something destructive or something malicious, or at least warped that way so that people that want to use you and manipulate you don't have to. I'm also realizing I probably should add what do you call this thing? Gives me something to think about. 6 weeks has been a series of Starfields and a few fun little mixes, and I added a little strobe effect that makes it easier to see everything while not seeing it all at the same time. It's kind of one of my favorite things to do right now, making these little effects. And they're half accidental, half on purpose, which is kind of like all the best things in life, you know. So, back to the book. He figures out the core tenet of the New Testament is to not resist evil. You know, turn the other cheek, that sort of idea. And on a base level, it seems like it's turn the other cheek while somebody hits you. But then, as he reads deeper into it, he realizes it's turn the other cheek and keep going with your life. You know, which is a very different way of reading it. Because one way you're presenting yourself to be the victim, the other way is you're the victim regardless, but you still move on with your life. Like, if somebody steals from you, you don't fight them over it, you just present them, keep going on. They'll try to steal some more, so what? Keep going. And it's a message we get everywhere. Right? It's this passive resistance. No, it's peaceful resistance, kind of the word. You know, Martin Luther King had it a little bit, but he got it from Gandhi, and I wonder where Gandhi got it from. But you know, it's partly a Buddhist principle as well. It's deep in Taoism too. Oh, we're having issues with the stream quality. Let's see if I can reduce the load on the machine. Alright. I usually add a beat to these things, but I don't think I'm going to do that today. Maybe next time. So, back to the book. We have Tolstoy. Essentially, at the end of his life, he's reflecting back, trying to figure out why, you know, he's miserable, essentially. Let's say 52, 55, trying to figure out, yeah, still trying to figure shit out in your late 50s, mid to late. And it's confusing because he knows he should have it done. He should be in the right place. He should know what he wants, but it doesn't really come to him. And he's a nihilistic atheist at this point. So it's that deep emptiness. So he's unsure what to do about himself. And one day he just decides, why don't I actually dig deep into this idea that I had a while ago about not resisting evil, and actually like take Christ at his word, so to speak, and then run that thought experiment forward, right? What does it mean when you have a society that doesn't resist evil? So, him as a judge, the criminal justice system is crap, right? And then he realizes the entire armed forces are crap. Because, you know, the entire idea is that we resist evil with our own evil. And it never works. I mean, this is, I believe, pre-World War One, and we all knew how that turned out, right? So now, with the entire selective process of the way we create oaths in this country, the police forces, you know, the way students are chastised, what you perceive as the evil in the student, you punish them. This is a time of corporal punishment. So it's every little sector of society gets broken down by these flaws, and then it's this whole idea that people can't live Christ-like because to live like that is impossible without divine intervention. And that was the excuse people had for not doing things like turning the other cheek. or not loving thy neighbor as though they were yourself, or loving thy enemy, right? Then it gets into this deep analysis of what do they actually mean by neighbor and enemy, and he comes to the realization that the enemy in Judaic terms was more like the guy from the other country, not necessarily the person you hate. So you are allowed to hate your enemy if they've done you wrong, right? You're allowed to be angry if somebody has faulted you, but you don't hate somebody from another country just because they're from another country. And it's just, I mean, it makes sense, but it's also radical for its time, which is probably why the message carried so well, right? So then, what do you do with this? You can't become a soldier at this point. You can't participate in society in the normal way. But then as this is going through his mind, he realizes that if you do have a society where people don't hate the enemy, so to speak, other people from other countries for no reason, you then have the creation of a global society. And it's funny how we're kind of emerging to that time now. And he talks about it as a time of fulfillment of prophecies. And what's weird about it is that as we live today, right, we're nearing this point of, well, it's called singularity, but it's multiple singularities at once. There's the AI singularity. There's a cultural singularity where we all have one, general idea of culture, which is pretty much a capitalist culture, right? That'd be fun, right? Emoji is the universal tongue. So, as Tolstoy is digging deeper into this model, right? Trying to see where society went wrong. He realizes that every time somebody's tried to make this point, particularly in the Rome, this is the Church of Rome we're talking about. They get shut down. I mean, it started the Protestant Reformation. So, and this idea that if resisting evil is the greatest evil, how do you deal with evil then? You just let it slide. Partly. But it's more seeing evil as a failure that you don't need to rectify. It just needs to burn itself out. Right? So, how do Jews resist evil in a Holocaust state? Oh, damn. Interesting. Like, how do you resist evil during a pogrom? Well, you don't try to fight the Nazis. That's a failure. It's a failed proposition from the get-go. Instead, you don't work with them. Actually, that is one option, right? Joining the enemy. Instead, though, what I think works best is to pity them. Say that they're broken. You don't try to change their mind. That's going to come on its own. You expose them to you. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. The transfer rate's been bunk. Probably because I'm adding so many effects at once. But I'm also seeing this slight little bordering effect. It makes me want to redo this whole thing. So I will. Take 2. But I'll keep talking. It'll be an interesting retake. I rather enjoy silences though. It's one of the funnest parts of this. Because I can literally sit and watch these effects all day. Alright. Take 2. So it's been fun this last week. So my end of things, I started working on this new clothing line, right? I never thought I'd actually be doing this professionally, but it's kind of becoming more and more essential. Part of the inspiration for it was this 5G worry that people have, and it doesn't really worry me as much as I like some of the benefits it come with, you know, being able to totally control when my phone bothers me, for one. Being able to choose when I'm tracked and untracked. Number 2. Things like that. Oh, that fixed it. Wow. Let's keep on this fix. Let's try that again. Stop streaming. Stop recording. This week's been a funny one, right? It seems like the world's brimming. I mean, that's kind of just what the news is designed to do. And lately, it's... Before this virus, the news was getting too good, you know what I mean? There was no longer a fear in people the way that it used to be. I mean, we no longer had the bomb to worry about. Pretty much, I mean, we kind of just got desensitized to it. Terrorism was out of the way because we realized those terrorists couldn't really do much to us. And what else could bring deep existential dread to the American people? It's kind of the way I like to think about this. So, the best option becomes invisible killer. It doesn't destroy the economy. It cripples it, but not irreversibly. The people that are uber wealthy can still survive, so to speak. You know, still buy another yacht, and create a bear trap for dumb speculators, because too many people were starting to make money on things like option trading on Wall Street. Just stupidly risky ventures. And then this idea comes along. Why don't we kill 5 birds with 1 stone? You can take out the heads of state for most of the world. You can take out the human trafficking rings, and you get to take out the full scope of, how do you describe these things? Uncomfortable freedoms for the greater global public in one fell swoop. I mean, we kind of got there with the terrorist threat, but it had nothing on this, because now it's for the sake of the public that our privacy is invaded. So this became part of the motivation for me working on this clothing line, right? I didn't want to be tracked. I wanted to be able to be a ghost again. Disappear into the murky abyss of reality. Not have to worry about who's watching me. Not even like I have anything to hide. Just, you know. I just like not having my phone ask me, how did you like it when you went to this place? Every time I step out the house. Then I hate being advertised about things that I've done. Like, if I wanted something there, I would have gotten it. Like, leave me the fuck alone. But it's fine. Because I feel like a lot of this worry about the virus is, I mean, it's warranted. It's best to act like it's actually there, but it's just unproductive. People can't really help anxieties, right? It's the sort of thing we're just wired into. And it's been crazy because I've been tracking these weird phenomena. People's dreams have been changing because of this. And I remember reading about, well, it was particularly in the Jewish community, right? In Germany, with Freud, before the Holocaust. Germans as a collective people, and Jews specifically, were having horrific dreams before the Holocaust. And recently I've been reading that something similar to that is happening now, right? Like I may have mentioned in the past, but my mother, for instance, has had dreams of hundreds of thousands of bodies, or just bodies floating in the ocean. And now New York is digging mass graves, and they're calling a city park. But the reality is, they're mass graves. The city cemetery, right? Because coupled with the economic collapse of this thing, you know, people just losing their jobs in general. So they don't want to claim the bodies and have to take on the responsibility of funeral rites. And how do you even visit the cemeteries? Do you even want to visit a cemetery filled with plague bodies? It's an interesting dynamic. Because, like, yeah, I read history occasionally. It's not my favorite subject. It's pretty much the most morose subject you can get. But it's fun to see how people cope and thrive in times of adversity. So I was reading one day about Roman energy drinks, a combination of vinegar and, well, wine vinegar, so you got a little drunk, and it had a tart taste to it, and you'd occasionally had honey to it, so it was like the Roman Gatorade. And I thought that'd be a great recipe to try, but then you realize, ugh, it'll fuck your guts up over time. And then a funny thought occurred to me, wait, the Roman rations were essentially vinegar, wine, cheese, and meat. And maybe a little bread if you're lucky, but it was essentially vinegar, wine, cheese, and meat. And given, the history of conquests and murky areas, and general, ill health from parasites and all this other gross things that you would not want floating around with you. These guys had the runs all the time. And then I thought, oh my god. Romans had battles, diarrhea. It makes a lot of sense why people didn't want to wear pants those days. Just as a general rule, if you didn't have to. So you'd be shitting yourself constantly, especially if you're on a fast march. Just oh god, and you can't step out of line. So you just let loose. Oh man. And it's been crazy, right? Because all this is going down, I keep thinking about this idea that Tolstoy had about not resisting evil, right? And it was his main conclusion after studying the New Testament. But it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to fight evil. Because why fight something inferior? You only brought down to the level of it. So, and then this week too, with Bernie quitting, I realized that maybe he came to the same conclusion. It wasn't worth fighting evil. Fighting the revolution isn't really the revolution he wants. It's not a revolution that should be fought. It's a revolution that becomes, people stop fighting. Imagine if that happened globally, right? People just give up on fighting.